When Ahab saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you, the one ruining Israel?" Elijah replied, "I have not ruined Israel. You and your father's family have, because you have abandoned the Lord's command. You follow Baal and Asherah. So let's go meet on Mount Carmel with all the prophets of Baal and the prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So Ahab summoned all the Israelites and gathered the prophets at Mount Carmel. Then Elijah approached all the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is, then follow him." The people didn't answer him a word. Then Elijah said, "I am the only remaining prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. So let 2 bulls be given to us. They can choose which one they want, cut it in pieces and place it on the wood, but don't light a fire. I'll prepare the other one, place it on the wood, and I won't light a fire. Then you call on the name of your God, and I'll call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers with fire is the one who is real." And the people said, "Okay, that's fine." So Elijah said, "Since you're so numerous, choose for yourselves 1 bull and prepare it first. Then call on the name of your God, but don't light the fire." So they took the bull, prepared it, called on the name of Baal from morning until noon. "Baal, answer us!" But there was no sound, no one answered. Then they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah mocked them. He said, "Shout loudly, for he's a god. Maybe he's thinking it over. Maybe he's wandered away, or maybe he's on the road. Maybe he's sleeping and needs to wake up." So they shouted loudly, and they cut themselves with knives and spears according to their customs. And all afternoon they kept on raving until the offering of the evening sacrifice. But there was no sound, and no one paid attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come near me." So all the people approached him. Then he repaired the Lord's altar that had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, 1 for each tribe of Israel. And he built an altar with the stones in the name of the Lord. Then he made a trench around the altar, large enough to hold about 4 gallons. Next, he arranged the wood, cut up the bull, and placed it on the wood. He said, "Fill 4 water pots with water and pour it on the offering to be burned on the wood." Then he said, "A second time." And they did it a second time. And then he said, "A third time." And they did it a third time. So the water ran all around the altar. He even filled the trench with water. At the time for offering the evening sacrifice, the prophet Elijah approached the altar and said, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and I am your servant, and that at your word I have done all these things. Answer me, Lord, answer me so that this people will know that you, the Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back." Then the Lord's fire fell and consumed the burnt offering, the wood, the stones, and the dust, and it licked up the water that was in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell face down and said, "The Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God." So there's a few main points that we need to discuss from that story. What it comes down to is that you need to choose, right? Who are you going to serve with your one and only life, right? So, King Ahab had made this terrible decision to let Israel and to encourage Israel, not just let them, but encourage them to, worship Baal and Asherah, who were these false gods. And then they have consequences for their sin, right? No rain. And it's been a couple years, and now he sees Elijah and he's blaming Elijah. And Elijah just said, it's not me, dude. It's you. So you can't blame God or other people for the consequences of your own sin. And the other thing is that you can't just ride the fence in between. You have to decide if you're going to follow God or not, right? There's no in between, right? It was like, choose Baal or choose God. Like, which side are you on? And the other point that we get from that is that there were 450 prophets of Baal in that group of people. And then there were 400 Asherah worshippers too. And then there's people in Israel who are like, I don't know what to say. And then you've got one person, Elijah, standing up for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. But God wasn't fazed by those odds. Neither was Elijah, right? Like, there's nothing to be worried about when you have God on your side, because he is the one and only God. And then along with that, like, there is nothing that Elijah could have done, right? Like, this was only something that God could do, right? There was water and water and water, tons of water. But it really showed that it was God, right? And the people ended up believing that too. And then finally they started to follow the commands of God, and they restored things. My candle went out. The point is, you have to choose. There is one life that you get, and there is one God that's true. So it's up to you to decide what you're going to do.